Excellent. Hello there, everyone. We'll be starting in just a couple minutes here. Getting my streaming stuff all set up.
Hello.
Hello there, Tunnel Lord. How you doing?
Doing good.
All right. I got one quick email. I got a couple minutes.
Hello, hello.
Hello there. What did I do with that? I had that.
Like the A team. It's typically the same people.
Well, that's not terribly surprising. All right. Oh, come on. All righty then. Oh, I got a minute left. Hey, what do you know? I'm not seeing anybody watching on the social medias, but we're still here in Zoom, which is, hey, this is good. This is good. Oh, I got to check that here. Oh, yep, Bobby, I see it. Gotcha. Excellent. Hello there, everyone. Well, let's get started. Hello there, everyday Americans. This is Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. We are live answering questions. We do this every couple of weeks. Was it the second and fourth Tuesday or Thursday of the month? I set aside some time in the evenings, not Thursday evenings, to sit here and discuss topics, answer questions, generally be engaged. If you want to join live, you want to be part of the Zoom, just head to the constitutionstudy.com and find the calendar, find one of these events, sign in, give me your information, and you will get an email with the links for the Zoom. If you're simply watching on YouTube or Periscope, I tried to do Parler. I guess Parler now has a live stream option, but I haven't had a chance to figure that out yet. Again, you can ask your questions simply by putting a comment in, typing a message. I will see them here on my screen, and we will do our best to answer those questions. Now, the last time we tried this, I tried it without a topic, and a suggestion was made that we have a starter topic. So that's a pretty good idea. One topic that I've been asked to cover a couple of times is the idea of judicial supremacy. The idea that the Supreme Court has final say on everything, and that what the Supreme Court says is dicta and cannot be changed or modified by anyone other than the Supreme Court, to which my answer is bunk. If you look at the Constitution, nothing in the Constitution gives the judicial division, the judicial branch, the authority to overrule the other branches of government. Couple of things to use. And so couple of places you want to go. If you're ever asked this, if you're ever challenged about this, and you want a couple of good resources, first is Federalist Papers number 78. Now, if you're not familiar with them, when the Constitution was signed and sent to the states for ratification, three gentlemen, it was James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, wrote a series of essays that were published in New York newspapers for the supporting and promoting the ratification of the Constitution. Of course, there was another group, and I don't remember all their names. They had another set of essays that were called the Anti-Federalist Papers, but Federalist Papers number 78 talks specifically about the power of the judicial branch. There's a couple of quotes in there. Let me see if I can find one real quick. All right. This is Alexander Hamilton, Federalist Paper number 78. Whoever attentively considers the different departments of power must perceive that in a government in which they are separated from each other, the judiciary, from the nature of its functions, will always be the least dangerous to the political rights of the Constitution, because it will be least in a capacity to annoy or injure them. The executive not only dispenses the honors, but holds the sword of the community. The legislature not only commands the purse, but prescribes the rules by which the duties and rights of every citizen are to be regulated. The judiciary, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse, no direction either of the strength or of the wealth of the society, and can take no active resolution whatever. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment, and must ultimately depend on the aid of the executive arm for the efficacy of its judgments. So what's happened? What's happened simple is what's been happening for decades and probably a couple of centuries. We've stopped paying attention to what the Constitution actually says. And over time, people who wanted power have accumulated power. Sometimes it was done because you had people that simply they wanted that power, they wanted control, and they were willing to find a way to make that happen. Frequently, the American people have actually asked the government to take power it wasn't truly delegated to have, because, well, we saw something and something had to be done. We've also made a habit of going to the courts for a redress of our grievance. Now, the First Amendment says Congress cannot make a law that would infringe our right to petition our government for a redress of grievance. But we've truly become dependent on courts, literally to the point where President George W. Bush, when the Patriot Act was passed out of Congress, in his signing document says, "Listen, I think this is unconstitutional, but I'm going to sign it and let the courts figure it out." Which, I mean, that was simply a dereliction of duty. We have this view that the courts hold all the wisdom, and that's not checks and balances. That's not the Constitution as it was written, but it's the Constitution as not only are many Americans taught, but it's the Constitution as our lawyers are taught. I just let's see. So I have I think it's coming out Monday. I've just finished up a video. No, sorry, it's coming out May 3rd. It's talking about how the California law has this really atrocious easement function. So if you have an agricultural business in California, the unions, the state says the unions have a right to come onto your property 3 times a day, 120 days a year, against your will, without your permission. And it's being challenged in court. It was oral argument in the Supreme Court. And I make the point that, I really am sad for these agricultural businesses, because their lawyers apparently need remedial reading classes, because their challenges this under a takings, because the courts have ruled it's a taking or treated this as a taking in the past. It has nothing to do with the taking, but you can read that and listen to that when that comes out. The other thing we see, so people in law school are taught that the case Marbury versus Madison is the first time that the court assumed to itself the power of judicial review. And they read that as the power to overturn legislation. So I did something weird. I did something strange. I did something very Constitution study. I actually found a copy of the Marbury versus Madison opinion. I found it at Cornell Law School online, and I read it. Um, and there's something very interesting I found. First of all, yes, it does. In the opinion, Chief Justice Marshall does say it is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial branch to say what the law is. That's what they're calling about judicial review. But he also went on, he also said that, where's the quote here? I had it a second ago. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? It is a proposition too plain to be contested that the Constitution controls any legislative act repugnant to it, or that the legislature may alter the Constitution by an ordinary act. Between these alternatives, there is no middle ground. The Constitution is either a superior paramount law, unchangeable by ordinary means, or it is on a level with ordinary legislation and, like other acts, is alterable when the legislature shall please to alter it. Certainly, all those who have framed written constitutions contemplate them as forming the fundamental and paramount law of the nation, and consequently, the theory of such government must be that an act of the legislature repugnant to the Constitution is void. I like that. I use that quote a lot, along with other quotes in Federal 78, because it makes the point that legislative acts repugnant to the Constitution are void. But what is this judicial review that Marshall was talking about? He goes on, and he does say, yes, it is emphatically the providence and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. But he goes on, those who apply the rule to particular cases must, of necessity, expound and interpret that rule. If two laws conflict with each other, the courts must decide on the operation of each. So, if a law be in opposition to the Constitution, if both the law and the Constitution apply to a particular case, so that the court must either decide the case conformably to the law, disregarding the Constitution, or conformably to the Constitution, disregarding the law, the court must determine which of these conflicting rules govern the case. This is of the very essence of judicial duty. If then the courts are to regard the Constitution and the Constitution is superior to any law, any ordinary act of the legislature, the Constitution and not such ordinary act must govern the cases to which they both apply. So what is he saying in normal human English? He says, yes, when a case comes before a court, it is their duty to apply the law to those particular cases. And if two laws are conflicting, to decide which to follow. If one of those laws is the Constitution, it must supersede any other act. Now, this doesn't say that the court gets to simply overturn or invalidate an act. It simply says that when the court is looking at a case, if the law is in conflict with the Constitution, it must put the Constitution above the law. Where did I see? There's one other quote I was looking for here. Where is it? Here we go. Finally, from Chief Justice Marshall. Thus, a particular phraseology of the Constitution of the United States confirms and strengthens a principle supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts, as well as other departments, are bound by that instrument. Meaning they're bound by the Constitution. It doesn't say that departments are bound to the opinion of the courts. It says we've given our opinion. Federal courts do not rule; they issue opinions. And if they look at a law and say, in our opinion, this is unconstitutional, that's advice. That's judgment. That is not the power to simply say it is now void. In fact, I just heard about an interesting case, I think in Wisconsin, where the Supreme Court of Wisconsin basically told the governor, no, your recent renewals of your emergency order, emergency declaration are unconstitutional. They're illegal. They are void. But now there's apparently a couple of cities that are saying, well, we're going to follow them, even though the Supreme Court said they're void. So it gets into a very interesting thing. And this often brings up the question I've been asked about before about nullification and checks and balances and all that. The thing to understand is a court has no power. It has opinion. And the reason we have three branches, the reason the legislative, executive, and judicial are separated is so that the two branches can look at what the third branch is doing and decide whether or not to follow it. So if the same way as if the legislature passes a law that the president deems to be unconstitutional, first of all, it's his duty not to sign it. It's his duty to veto it. If it's already been passed into law, he swore an oath to the Constitution to support the Constitution of the United States. He's got to place that above the acts of Congress. When there's a disagreement between the two, the court can offer an opinion. But if the court offers an opinion in a case and the legislator and executive say, yeah, no, that's stupid, they're not somehow bound to the opinion of a court. They just need the understanding and the backbone and the intelligence to say, no, we don't live under an oligarchy of unelected judges. We live under a constitutional republic where Constitution is supreme, where the rule of law matters, and where the three branches of government, the judicial is the weakest. All they offer is opinions. So that's my little rant on judicial supremacy. Does anybody have any questions? Come on, it's awful quiet.
Well,
and yet, it, and you're right. It can be a lot to absorb. I try to break it down to something into analogies and stuff to make it simple. It's the understanding that of the three branches of government, they are not co-equal. They are meant to check each other, but the vast majority of the power delegated to the United States is delegated to Congress. The president has a few powers that he can exercise on his own, but very few. And the judiciary is there to offer opinions, to look at the case before them and offer an opinion. It's the hard thing about absorbing it is this is not what we've been taught. And in fact, this is not how most people live their lives. Tunnel Lord, you shared a video with me about a county commissioner who not only misunderstands nullification, but I would say probably goes on as far as to say misunderstands the role of the judiciary, and would just as easily submit himself to the opinion of a judge as to the law if it came across his desk. Bobby, Christopher, you guys have something to chime in with? I don't bite. Besides, I'm online. I can't get you.
Well, yeah, I've been reading the Federalist Paper 78 a lot recently for something like that video series I'm working on. Yeah, kind of what you've said. I already kind of knew because all of the videos and stuff.
Yeah, but and it's important to think about this beforehand rather than in the last minute. I've been referring to constitutional education as an inoculation, a preparation of your mind for what the Constitution actually says, to recognize when your rights are being violated and prepared to defend and assert them. It's what John Jay says. I've just been using the inoculation analogy that, by exposing yourself to these ideas, we can begin to recognize when, think about it. Well, how often have we heard about laws that, well, we won't know if it's really a law until the court opines on it, or well, there are laws, but it's never actually been challenged in court, so we don't know if it would stand up. Well, that's not the way the system was designed, and the fact that we don't follow it is a lot of the reason why we have problems, and a lot of the reason I think why when I'm reading court cases, they almost always are quoting the opinions of other judges rather than the Constitution and law.
That's actually reminds me. Yeah, cause see, I almost want to like bring up. I want like, cause yeah, we need to like practice arguments and stuff, like counter arguments, like what we're gonna run into out there in the field or whatever you could call it. Because well, you know what? In that commissioner video I sent you, the that one uh, lady who tried to get rid of the idea that the nullification or to prove nullification or just obeying the law is fine, rather than what that commissioner stated. Is like I said in my email or in the video, people will turn their brains off to the idea of you know nullification or whatever. Um, yeah, because my whole point is we go out there, we're gonna run into people with all sorts of arguments, and it would be a good idea to have answers to those arguments and to be efficient at arguing. I guess I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned over the years to argue with myself, to take something I've heard and to kind of extrapolate it and figure out how I'd argue. But it's actually one of the reasons why I think people challenging your opinions is so important. There's a verse of scripture that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens his countenance on another. The idea being, it's one of the reasons why I don't get upset when people challenge my assertions, as long as they are honest and open about listening to the answer. That's probably the biggest, that's the frustration I have, is not that someone comes up and says, but what about this? Well, all right, that's fine, because it helps me refine my argument. It may expose me to points of view that I hadn't heard of before. And how do I, and they may actually make me, I've had them modify my opinion. I went from those early on in the podcast. I did an episode about, what was it? I think it was driver's licenses, and it had to do with public roads and publicly owned property. And several people brought up some very interesting points, and I actually ended up moderating my position because I realized, yeah, they have a point. We have to look at someone with a different opinion not as the enemy, but as an opportunity to learn. And all I have ever asked is that if you've asked my opinion, if you challenge my opinion, then give my answer, not respect, but don't dismiss my answer just because it's not the one you want to hear. And I deal with that a lot. And again, I get lots of questions, and I'll spend probably more time than most people tell me is healthy debating with someone, hoping that I'll touch something and say, but you're missing the point that I've said here. But those are actually excellent opportunities to help sharpen the argument when we consider someone else's point of view. Okay, I actually have a question. Andy says, I sort of have a question. Is that being like sort of pregnant, Andy? I'm just wondering. Yeah, okay. So I have a question. I'm not sure if it makes sense in regards to court challenge in the level of severity. Well, go for it, Andy. Let her rip.
All right, bear with me here. I'm sorry. So
that's okay.
My question is,
this is where we get together to share information. So relax. You're among friends.
All right. So I was watching TV a couple nights ago, and I just heard someone say something about, oh, well, that's a federal crime. And it got me thinking, Well, what difference does it make if it's a, just a simple, uh, county level court or Supreme Court? If it's a federal crime, does that mean it's going to be a more severe charge? I'm not sure if you see where I'm going with this,
Yeah,
but
I see exactly where you're going, and I see this a lot. So it's another term that's often used. I talk about judicial supremacy. It's federal supremacy, and here's the all right. Here's my answer to that. See, everyone thinks it's like the federal, it's a federal crime. That's more serious, and it actually brings up two very interesting points. See, the idea is we're all afraid of the feds. We've been indoctrinated with this idea that the supremacy clause says the federal government is supreme over the states. That is not what it says. Let me quote it to you, although I can probably do it from heart. I like to be sure I get it right. But if you go to Article 6, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution, it says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. Now, people take that, and I've heard lawyers, I've heard politicians saying, well, federal law, yes, so what? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. There's a case I covered several months ago that brought up the question of what's called dual sovereignty. The idea that a single crime can violate both state and federal law. Therefore, if someone is acquitted in state court, they can still be charged with the same crime in federal court because it's different jurisdictions, it's different sovereignties, to which I basically called BS. Here's the part to understand. The 10th Amendment. Everybody here remember the 10th Amendment? Again, I'm looking it up just because I want to make sure I get it right. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. So I want you to stop right there. There are powers delegated to the United States, the Union, the federal government. And this says any powers that are not specifically delegated to the federal government continues nor prohibited by to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That means there is no law that is legitimately both a state and federal crime. I can think of, I can sort of kind of think of one situation. Actually, if I think about it, let me double check here. I want to get this right. I think it's the 21st Amendment. Yes. So the 21st Amendment, which repealed prohibition, states that the 18th Amendment established prohibition, and Section 2 of the 18th Amendment says the Congress in several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. There was a shared jurisdiction under the 18th Amendment. So enforcing prohibition, the manufacture, sale, and transportation of intoxicating liquors could be done by both state and federal. However, the 21st Amendment says the 18th Amendment to the Constitution is repealed. Section 2, then the transportation or importation of into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery, use, therein of intoxicating liquor in violation of law thereof is hereby prohibited. So under the 18th Amendment, we did have some shared jurisdiction, but that was repealed by Section 1 of the 21st Amendment. So really, there is no crime that can legitimately violate both state and federal law. Either it's a state crime or it's a federal crime. So, Andy, kind of to your point, we've been indoctrinated with the idea that the federal government rules over the states. It does because we're ignorant. It does, because we, the people, don't know any better. We hire people in the states who don't know any better. And those of us who do know better haven't had a good chance informing our fellow citizens and our employees in state government that no, they are not servants of the federal government. The federal government is their servant. The federal government's a creation of the states. I should say it's a creation of the Constitution, which the states are the party to the Constitution. The states determine what, when, and how the Constitution is changed, and when and if power is added or removed from the federal government. It's this inverted power structure, this inverted understanding of the power structure that led to this idea of federal supremacy, and in some ways has led to the idea of judicial supremacy, because again, we don't understand the system. And we have law schools that don't teach the Constitution. We have this legal game of telephone where judges are quoting other judges who are quoting other judges who are, it's like, somebody so-and-so said that so-and-so said that so-and-so said that so-and-so said that this is okay. And it's ridiculous. But since we don't know, we're not inoculated, we don't recognize that's why we're here, right? Because we want to know, we want to understand. Andy wants to say, hey, when they say federal, they were more afraid of the feds, that's because we've let them loose and we don't know any better. It's one of the reasons why I am so emphatic that we need to be in touch with our county sheriff. Our county sheriff is the most powerful law enforcement officer they're the chief law enforcement officer in the county. They are the most powerful person in the county from that standpoint. And they can protect you if they know their job. But you'll never know until you talk to them. And you'll never know if your sheriff is prepared to do their job if you don't sit down and talk to them and ask. Now, where I live now in Tennessee, I got a good sheriff, man. I've talked to him a couple of times, and my favorite line of his is, "I work for you. Take as much time as you need." That's the idea. He works for the people. Life is great. By the way, I'm meeting him again to discuss some of these executive orders and a couple other things we're trying to get done down here in the county. We've got we're trying to get a couple of events set up here, and I want to see his input on. But so, Andy, that is you'll see it on TV. It's a reinforcement of a falsehood that, if you're caught for drug possession and your state charges, that's one thing. But if it's a federal crime, oh, you're really in trouble. Well, guess what? That federal crime is void. It's empty. It's meaningless. And it's only the fact that we keep allowing, we allow the courts to tell us otherwise. We allow our employees in the legislature to allow those judges to keep sitting when they violate their oath of office. All right, that we allow them to hold their job when they violate their oath of office, the representatives. It all comes back to, we keep looking for someone to blame. It all comes back to we the people. Washington, was it Washington? Yeah, it was Washington said, hang on a second. Let me pull that quote up. I've used it a lot lately. It's one of those quotes that has really, I go through these I don't want to call them phases, but I go through points where it's like, ooh, this is a really cool quote, and I use it all the time. Then a few months later, I'll find another one that grabs my fancy. Here it is. Again, this is George Washington. This is his very first inaugural address in 1789. He said, "And since the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people." It's in our hands. And that is, that is something I keep drumming in to people who are listening. I keep repeating it over and over and over again, because I know people look at some, oh, you feel bad, right? It's like, oh, what are we going to do? There's nothing we can do. I hear it all the time. There's nothing we can do. No, there is something you can do. But the first thing you have to recognize is this mess is partially your fault. And then once you understand that it's partially your fault, then you can understand that means I can do something about it. That's the part that we are, I think, intentionally divorced from, is that by not understanding that the message that's here is because we haven't done our job, that means that if we do our job, we can fix it. And that to me is the message that we have to keep repeating, is stop looking for someone else to blame. Blame yourself, then dust yourself off and figure out, how do I make it better? I don't need to fix the whole thing. How do I make it better? What do I do that makes it better? One of the best things you can do is simply be armed with information that says, when someone, and it's not a TV program, when you encounter someone in real life and they say, well, federal law says that law is void. What do you mean it's void? It's simple. Alexander Hamilton, the Supreme Court said if it's repugnant to the Constitution, that law is void. But that means if I disobey it, that means if I ignore it, I'm not being disobedient, because how do you disobey a law that is void? I don't. But what I do is I obey a law, or I should say, if I can't disobey a law that's void. So I am peacefully not complying with your delusion that simply because the federal government said it, or some bureaucrat said it, or the president said it, it's law. It's not. In fact, I just recorded it. I think it's coming out Monday. Monday. I just recorded my episode on America Out Loud that's coming out Monday. And I cover a Biden executive order, another one that, again, it's void. It's meaningless because it violates the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. Fine. I don't, it's like, are you going to throw me in jail for violating a void law? Okay. Then let's understand that's a crime. It's a crime. It's a federal crime to deprive you of a right protected by the Constitution. It's that education, that inoculation that says when the person on the street or the law enforcement officer or code enforcement shows up and says, hey, you need to wear a mask when you're in the state park. I'm sorry, that law is void. It is a crime for you to attempt to enforce that. All right, not for the private citizen. It has to be done under color of law. But we need to understand that and be willing to start pushing back to, as Captain John Parker said, to stand our ground. We've been ceding ground for decades. It's time we start standing our ground. So I've ranted on that for a little while. Anybody else have something?
A+ on your answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Andy. And that's why that's why I want to do these live Q&As. These are excellent opportunities for those either things either questions you have or something you haven't quite thought through. We can chat it out and come up with a good answer everyone can use. So
yeah, all right. So I got a question about federal supremacy or whatever. Can you point in the right direction, where I could read to address that is a fallacy and a myth, what to read?
What's the best? Well, I'm trying to think of. I'm sure there's one of the Federalist Papers that deals with it. I just can't think of what it is off the top of my head.
I was thinking the executive, the ones that talk about the executive powers.
like 69, 70, and like something else. A few others.
Yeah. You may also look at like, I think 6 or 8 might be good as well. I think is 6. Well, no, 6 talks about dissension between the states. That's not the one I was thinking of. Is it 8? Nope. But here's where I come down. So think about it this way. This is where I come to the fallacy of federal supremacy from a simple bit of rational thinking. Okay. Which came first, the states or the state governments or the federal government?
Well, I mean, the colonies. So yeah, the states.
Colonies became states. States became, all right. So what created the federal government?
Well, the states volunteered to ratify the Constitution, so that's what made it.
Right. So the Constitution created the states. If you look at Article 7 of the Constitution, it says the ratification of the convention of 9 states shall be sufficient of the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. So if the federal government is a creation of the Constitution and the Constitution has to be ratified by the states, who is in charge of whom?
Well, I mean, it would be the states at that point because they made the federal government.
Now, there's if you ever listen to Rick Green, he has this analogy when he talks about the Constitution and the federal government. He says the Constitution, he refers to it as like a bucket with a lid on it, right? And we took this bucket and when we ratified the Constitution, we put a whole bunch of powers in. We have taxation, and we have funding a military, and have the laws, and we have all this, and we put it in it, and we put a top on it. We said, these are the powers of the United States, period, end of story. Now, 27 times, we have opened that box up, and 26 of those we put powers in once we took power out, right? Who actually does the adding and removing of powers from the United States, the federal government? Who does it?
Well, I mean, it'd be us because to amend the Constitution, you got to go to the states. You have to propose it in Congress and then go to the states. It spells that out in Article 5, right? I think
Yes. So it can be proposed either by the states or by the Congress. There's 2 ways to propose amendments, but there's only one way to ratify them, and that is by either convention or legislative vote of 3/4 of the states. The states control the Constitution. The states are party to the Constitution. And since the Constitution is a compact and agreement between the states, contract law states that when you have a multi-party contract like that, disputes about the contract are dealt with by a majority of the parties. So there's 5 people on this Zoom call right now. So if we created a contract, a compact between us. If there's a dispute about that compact, it is dealt with by a majority of us deciding what the answer is. So the federal government is a creation of the Constitution, which is a creation of the states. The federal government derives its power from the Constitution, which specifically limits its power to only what is specifically delegated. So it's the fallacy of federal supremacy comes from a basic understanding of recognizing the Constitution is a compact, that the Constitution created the federal government. And in fact, let me go back because there's a great quote. Where are we here? Back to Federalist 78. Federalist 78. I got to find it in here. No, it's up early. Where is it? Here it goes. There is no position which depends on clearer principles than that every act of a delegated authority contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it is exercised is void. Now, pause that for a second. We just discussed about the power delegated to the United States. Therefore, every position, every branch, every office, every employee of the federal government is dealing with a delegated authority delegated to them by the Constitution. So any act of a delegated authority contrary to the commission, the Constitution, is void. Right? That's the first thing we need to wrap your head around. We think of President Biden as king. We think of of Congress as, this band of rulers. We think of the Supreme Court as, a robed oligarchy. That is not true. They are all exercising delegated authority. Their power comes from us. Remember your Declaration of Independence, that to protect these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Wrap that around your head. That to me is a very important point. Continuing on. No legislative act, therefore, contrary to the Constitution, can be valid. To deny this would be to affirm that the deputy is greater than the principal, that the servant is above his master, that the representatives of the people are superior to the people themselves, that men acting by virtue of powers may do not only what their powers do not authorize, but what they forbid. You want some language, Tunnel Lord, that explains the fallacy of federal supremacy. There it is, Federal 78. No legislative act. And if that is true for a legislative act, in other words, if Congress is exercising a delegated authority contrary to the Constitution, if that cannot be valid, how can an executive authority or a judicial authority created under the same Constitution be any more valid? The very idea, and I love the way he puts this, to deny this would affirm that the deputy is greater than the principal. Imagine the deputy being superior to the sheriff. It's incongruous, right? That the servant is above his master. There's a vision for you. They're supposed to be public servants, and we are the masters. That the representatives of the people are superior to the people themselves. He's just laid out three incongruous statements that are just beyond the pale. The very thought of them is ridiculous. But because we haven't been taught to read and understand the Constitution, much less the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, we don't realize that the very idea of the federal government exercising control over the people is as ridiculous as a servant ordering the master of the house around, as the shepherd, as a deputy ordering the principal or their sheriff around. He says that men acting by virtue of powers may do not only what their powers do not authorize, but what they forbid. That's the way it was designed. But because we don't know, we don't understand, we get lost. All right, Bobby asked a question. I want to get back to it. I didn't miss you, Bobby. I got so engaged in this. I love this stuff. If laws are supposed to start in the House, then head to the Senate, then finally be signed by law, where does the authority gives validity for? Okay. First of all, laws do not need to originate in the House, only laws regarding revenue. So a bill can be submitted can be started in either the Senate or the House. I want to find out. It's Article 1, Section 7, Clause 1 says all bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur amendments as on other bills. Okay. So with the exception of raising revenue, a law can originate in either house. The other house has to agree to it. They have to both pass the same language. Then it goes to the president. An executive order is only binding on the executive branch. So if you go to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. The executive branch is a bit of a misnomer. The power is actually vested in the president, right? So you think of it this way. Congress, you have a group of people, currently 535, right, that exercise power together. In the courts, you have the supreme and inferior courts made up of members determined by the number of members determined by Congress, and they exercise their power coherently, right? They work together. The executive power rests in a single person, the president. Every member of the executive branch works for the president. They are exercising the power of the president in the president's name. Any executive power is enacted in the president's name and by the president's authority, because he is the sole executor of the sole vestee of executive power. Now, if you have you have multiple executive departments. You have, even in Washington's time, they had hundreds of people. How is the president supposed to exercise their power? Well, what the president does is he writes a memo. He says, okay, I am the executive power to, I think of a good example. Okay. So Congress has passed a law. It's my job to execute this law. This is how we're going to do it. It's exactly what. Right? So he says, okay, Congress has given us the power. We've passed a law that says, again, let's see, I was thinking of something. I'm trying to think of something that's not unconstitutional, which is really pretty hard to think of a recent law that's not unconstitutional. All right. So Congress has passed a law that says we're going to collect X amount of sales tax. Here's the sales tax rate, right? Or not the sales tax, income tax. 16th Amendment gives us the income tax. So, okay, Congress passed a law. Here's the income tax. The president then writes a memo that says, Congress has given me this power under the Constitution. I'm executing this power. IRS, here's what you are to do. Here's how you're going to exercise the power of collecting those taxes. That's they originally were just memos. It wasn't until somewhere about the mid 1800s, I think, they started calling them executive orders and giving them numbers. I don't remember exactly when they did that. An executive order legally is nothing more than a directive from the chief executive to his subordinates on how to execute his power. The problem we have is that men acting by virtue of powers are doing not only what their powers do not authorize, but what they forbid. So, for example, President Biden just signed an executive order that said if the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, Attorney General, some combination thereof, determine that a person is acting as an agent of the Russian government or has had some involvement with the Russian government, their assets can be frozen. Their property within the United States can be frozen, even if you're an American citizen. Now, he quoted, I think, 4 U.S. laws. And when I did this for, again, it'll be Monday's episode in America Out Loud. 2 of those were bogus. They had nothing to do with what the president had in his executive order. The other 2 were pretty iffy to begin with. But Congress cannot order the president to violate the Constitution. So even if there was a law to enact, President Biden is violating the oath of office. He's violating the Constitution by depriving people of their property by ordering people who work for him, part of his executive departments, to deprive people of their property without due process of law. The problem is executive orders, again, are treated as law. They are not law. Now, presidents are good at manipulating things by basically we're back to the same thing. The president cannot order one of his subordinates to violate the law or to violate the Constitution. If anybody here, raise your hand if you've been in the military. I personally have not been in the military. I have friends that have been and family that's been in the military. I have not, but I have heard this over and over and over and over and over again. If you are in the military, you are obliged to follow all, how's the term they use for it? Legal orders. You're only obliged to follow legal orders. Meaning, if you're in a fire team and your commanding officer orders you to murder women and children, you are under no obligation to follow those orders. Those are illegal orders. Same way, executive orders cannot order somebody, if they order someone to violate the law, they are not legally bound to abide by them. The problem we have is because we treat the president as a king rather than a president, we let them get away with ordering. It's a criminal syndicate. You know, he's the godfather going, yeah, go whack this guy. And he doesn't say go whack this guy. He sets up all these rules and stuff, but he's basically telling him to break the law. And we let him get away with it because we think the federal government is supreme. We think the president is the most powerful person in the world. And we don't know any better. So what do? We go to the courts and beg the courts, which are part of the federal government, creations of the Constitution, to tell another part of the federal government created by the Constitution to stop breaking the law. But that court has no legal authority to force them to do it. However, the states have the legal authority as the parties to the compact to not only order the president to, in effect, nullify those executive orders, but to actually arrest and charge people who try to enforce illegal orders within their borders. So with all the gun control stuff, I've seen a lot of articles about different states and things they're doing about gun control laws and executive orders and illegal this and illegal that. And here's the thing I want you to notice. The vast majority of the states, Virginia went through this in a lot of their counties, all they're saying is we will not spend state money to enforce illegal federal laws. That's a half measure. It's not a full cop-out, but it's only a half measure. States should be saying, no, you are legally forbidden from infringing on the right of our citizens to keep and bear arms. It is illegal. We will not allow it in our state. If you attempt to enforce it in our state, we will arrest any federal agent. We will try them under state law. In fact, I would love to see them saying, in fact, we'll go so far as to say, we will cooperate with the FBI in investigating them for violations of federal law because it's a federal crime under color of law to deprive anyone of a right protected by the Constitution of the United States. Absolutely right, Bobby. This is why change starts locally. It's one of many reasons why change starts locally, because that's where the power is. But it's also where the people have the most influence. Like I said, I can pick up the phone, call the sheriff's department and says, hey, let me get a meeting with the sheriff, and no problem. I can generally pick up the phone and set up a meeting with my state rep and my state senator, and I'll usually get a meeting in a reasonable amount of time. I can't get my U.S. representative to return a phone call. Where's my power? My power is the sheriff that says, hey, ATF, you come knocking on Paul's door to confiscate his magazines over 10 rounds. My sheriff, my deputy would be more than happy to show up and arrest you. That is actually the conversation I have had with my sheriff. When I pick up the phone and dial 911 and his deputy shows up, I want to be sure that deputy understands their job is to protect everyone's rights. That's their first priority. That includes arresting federal trespassers. And that includes cooperating with the FBI under charges under 18 USC 242. It's one of the reasons why listen, the courts are there for a redress of grievance. They have their purposes, but we shouldn't be dependent on the courts because judges are government employees. They're supposed to be non-biased, and I believe many of them try to be non-biased, but they're federal employees. They've gone to a law school that has not taught them the Constitution. Why would I go to a federal court to beg the federal government to honor my rights when I can walk into the office of my state legislator and say, hey, you swore an oath. You better do this because I will make a stink if you don't. If you're not going to uphold your oath, I will make sure every voter in your district is aware of the fact that you are a liar, a cheat, and dishonorable. Those are tough. Those are hard words. But it's the truth. If you swear or affirm to uphold the Constitution and you don't, well, then you're a liar. And what do we call it when someone lies under oath? Oh, yeah, we call that perjury. Now, technically, it's not perjury because I've actually looked it up and but it's, I want the state to protect me. Why should I go beg a federal government court to protect me when I can walk up to my state rep and say, hey, your job is to protect me. When I can walk into my sheriff's office and say, your job is to protect me. When I can go to a county board meeting and say, hey, guys, ladies, your job is to protect our rights. You swore and affirmed an oath to support the Constitution. I know you didn't learn about the Constitution. I know it wasn't required reading, but guess what? Here it is. And it's one of the reasons why I like to help people that are trying to get groups to do the right thing. If the federal government's going to send ATF agents to my door and my sheriff's simply going to arrest them and send them to jail, but what I want to see people doing is I want us to focus less on the civil suit. I just did this the other day. What was I talking about? Who was it? Oh, yeah. It had to do with a case was just argued before the Supreme Court about the agricultural businesses in California. And my point being is if the case goes for the plaintiffs, in other words, the state of California loses, the plaintiffs hopefully will get damages. Now, it's the people of California that will pay those damages, but hey, guess what? The people of California hired these idiots. That's their fault. But I want more than that. I want these people charged. These are crimes. I want them charged with crimes. I understand. I call up the FBI and ask and file a complaint. They're not going to do diddly squat. But if we can get 50, 100, 1,000 people across this country to start filing charges, complaints, look it up. Go to uscode.house.gov. You can go down, find Title 18 of the US Code. Scroll down, you'll find section 242. It is a federal crime punishable by a fine and or a year in jail to deprive someone under color of law of a right protected by the Constitution. Think of all the mask mandates and all the times people under color of law said, you're not allowed to go out at liberty unless you cover a mask. You're not allowed out of your house unless we say so. You're not allowed to run your business. We're going to deprive you of your property. We're going to deprive you of your liberty without due process. That's a violation of the Fifth Amendment and a violation of the 14th Amendment. Those are all federal crimes. Where are the charges? See, the FBI can ignore me. They can ignore the 5 of us. They can ignore 100 of us. But if we get hundreds and thousands of people that are starting to stand up and say, wait a second, no. I'm not going to beg for you to give me my rights. They're mine. I've been endowed created with certain unalienable rights. They're mine. I'm not begging for them anymore. You want to take them, you got a fight on your hands. And yeah, I'll sue you in civil court for the damages you're doing to pay for my lawyer, my legal bills, to pay for any lost in time or employment I've had. I'll sue as much as I'll also be my guest. Trust me, I have this dream. If one day I win this court case and I get like $50 million or $10 million, I want to do nothing more than fund law firms that will focus on what the Constitution actually says. I would love nothing more than to set up a foundation that will fund court cases that are protecting people's rights, that are prosecuting under 18 USC 242. Not prosecuting, but that are investigating, that are suing and pushing for these investigations. I want to be able to sue the FBI for dereliction of duty because they refuse to enforce the law. But we have to stop. It's not good enough for the taxpayer to pay for the mistakes of hiring these people. The people who are committing these crimes need to be fined or put in jail. Because let's face it, you can sue President Biden all you want. Does he really care? It doesn't cost him one dime. He doesn't pay for the lawyers. He doesn't pay the fines. He doesn't pay the court fees. He doesn't pay the damages. It costs him nothing. But for him to be in the dock, for him personally to be in that seat, with the possibility of not only paying a fine, but going to jail. Now, President Biden, I'm sure that'd be a pretty tough sell. What about your local law enforcement officer? What about your local county official? What about your governor, your mayor, your state official? Wouldn't you love to walk up and say, you realize you are breaking a federal law, and my second phone call, you do this, my second phone call is to the FBI. First phone call is to my lawyer. My second phone call is to the FBI. Because you're breaking a federal law. 18 USC 242. Go to constitutionstudy.com. Look for Knowing Your Rights. There's a little placard. There you go. It's got it quoted right on there. All right. I've been ranting on that for a while. Okay. Andy's furiously nodding his head. He agrees. You see, and if you had your video up, I could see that you're furiously nodding your head. But I know not everybody wants to do that.
If I can put it up, I won't mind.
Yeah, be my guest. Anybody can put up video. There's no restriction on that. There he is. Hey, and I got a face to put with a name.
Have you even got my Constitution
hat?
Scholars
Show
hat?
off the
Yeah,
hat, man.
I do. Love it.
That's right. You're the one that got the Constitution Scholar hat. Thank you, and thank you for the review. It was great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's the very first Constitution Scholars hat I sold. So,
It's a neat hat.
you got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've got, I've got hats and shirts and stuff. I've been trying to work with a local art school. I want to create a whole series of shirts, and I want them to all be sayings of the founding fathers, but done in such a way that they're really engaging. So, I want to have Ben Franklin and, democracy is 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty, and then on the back, like liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. I want to do stuff like that. I'm not that good an artist. But that's the type of stuff that I'd love to do. So, okay. If anyone else has a question, I'm more than willing to answer, but while people are coming up with their ideas, and I want to give you guys fair warning. I got 2 things going on. One, no one here is in Middle Tennessee, at least not that I'm aware of. I'm actually trying to get, there's a couple of events I'm trying to get down here in Bedford County, down where I live. One of them is an event if you go to, let me make sure I get the right website. bigbatusa.org. B as in boy, big bat, BAT is in baseball bat, Big Bat USA. In fact, you want to just put it in the chat since everyone's here. I know one of the people involved in this. I was talking to him the other day, and they are going to do a tour. They're doing 48 of the 50 states. They're actually going to hit each and every state. And they've got two messages. One, I forget what the national message was interesting, but they're actually working with constitutional sheriffs. They're actually looking for counties in these states where they can hold rallies. And it's like a one-day deal, right? They roll in the night before, they set up, in the morning, they do their bit, and they pack up and head off to the next venue. Check it out. I'm hoping to speak at several of these in the Middle South, right? The somewhere in the southern USA, southeastern USA. So that's very interesting. Hopefully I'm going to get them out here to the local camp or the local fairground here when they come through. I think it's like July 19th. The other thing is I'm going to be in Bismarck, North Dakota. Looks like it's August this year. When is it? Hang on. I'm going to be in Bismarck, North Dakota on August. So it's going to be like the weekend of the 14th. There's two things I want you to know. Now, you know me, I live near Nashville. I do not trust the airlines as far as I can throw an A380. Right? I am not flying to Bismarck, North Dakota because I don't trust that they're not going to spring a vaccine passport on me. And I'm not doing a vaccine passport. I have several reasons. I have my own questions about the vaccine. Do a vaccine, don't do a vaccine. That's your thrill. But I do not trust companies that say, you must have a vaccine. You must take an experimental drug in order to do business with us. Well, fine, then I won't do business with you. You know what? Even if I had a vaccine, if they were to mandate that, I don't think I'd do business with them either. It's another one. We need to stop looking for other people to fix this. So I'm going to drive from Nashville, Tennessee to Bismarck, North Dakota in August. Now, if you look at a map, there's a couple ways I can go. I can go through, I know the Western route, I go up through like Omaha and whatnot, but I have two things I want to ask you guys. One, if you're anywhere near Bismarck, North Dakota, keep an eye out. It's called Midwest Freedom Fest. It'll be the weekend of right now. I guess it's scheduled for the weekend of the 14th of August. And I will be there. And I'd love to meet you. I'd love to meet you face to face. I'd love to shake your hand like a real human being, like real men and women. And I'm going to be doing a couple of lectures there in Bismarck. I think I'm going to be doing another one in Killdeer on another date around that same time frame. But if you're on the way, like I said, I can go through Nebraska. I can go through Iowa. I probably will not go through Illinois and Wisconsin just because I don't know if I want to go in the commie state of Illinois. And Wisconsin is not much better, but we'll see. But take a look at the routes. If you are anywhere along those routes and you want to put something together, contact me. I will show up. I will speak at an event. I'll sit down and have coffee. You want to show up one night and just get a bunch of people together for a cookout and whatever. I get in touch with me. We'll see if we can make it happen. Now, this is going to be a tough, I am telling you, it's going to be a bit of a tough haul. For those of you who do not know, my wife is in a wheelchair, which means when I'm gone for long periods of time, it is very hard on her because she's not ambulatory, right? So there's a lot of limitations. So I'm investing a lot of time and effort to get up there and get back, but I would love to meet you guys along the way. Let me know. I would, again, I'd love to meet people. I'd love to talk with people. And I'd love to be involved. Yeah, Jan, apparently Jan asked, originally this was scheduled for June, but they couldn't get the venue in June except like Father's Day weekend, which would have been a tough sell. So they moved it to August. In fact, that reminds me, I'm still waiting for Dustin owes me an answer on a question. Now that I think about it.
Oh, well, so knowing what we know about how the Constitution gives the federal government powers, and those are the only powers it has, wouldn't that mean that they're like the most anemic government in the entire country? I mean, because they only have like a few things they can do. I mean, I can almost say the commissioners in my county are more powerful if the Constitution was upheld, like how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. So we think of the federal government over the state governments over the states, and it's actually the people over the state governments over the federal government. I should say the people over the state governments and the county governments over the federal government. It truly is the emperor that has no clothes. The federal government is exercising powers it doesn't have, but everybody goes along with it. So again, we dismiss the Constitution either because we don't know, or because we want the federal government to rule us. But it's really, it's in some ways it's empowering, and it's been invigorating to realize, wait a second, those laws are null and void. Now, I'm not saying there's not a consequence for telling Uncle Sam to, right? There will be consequences for that. But I keep saying, first we have to do is we have to understand we need to stand our ground. Like I said, Monday I did, and if you haven't seen the video or read the article I did on Monday about the Battle of Lexington, please do. It is extremely important. We are setting ourselves up for another shooting war. And really the only question is, will the American people have the backbone to stand up and shoot? We're doing exactly what British did. Washington, D.C. is doing exactly what the British did in 1775. Our state governments are doing exactly what the British did in 1775. And the shot heard around the world is waiting to be fired. And we're not learning. But I understand. There's an interesting statistic, and I haven't seen the proof of it, but I've heard it often enough. I'm willing to repeat it. See, as I understand it, in the colonies, only about a third of the colonists actually wanted independence. 1/3 wanted independence. 1/3 wanted to remain British subjects. 1/3 didn't care one way or the other. But only 3% of the colonists actually fought for independence. Now, if that number is correct, that only 3% of the colonists fought for independence, that means we don't all need to stand up in front of Uncle Sam. What it means is that we need to stand with the people who are willing to. Every person needs to make a decision for themselves. How far are they willing to go? How far will they push it? Are you willing are you willing to learn? Okay. Are you willing to not comply? Are you willing to stand in front of that law enforcement officer, hand him a piece of paper and inform them they're breaking federal law? Are you willing to stand there in handcuffs? Now, once you decide how far you're willing to go, the more important than that is, are you willing to stand with the people who are willing to stand up for your rights? As I told you, my sheriff said, my sheriff has told me that his deputies are trained. They're there to protect the rights of the individuals. That's their first and foremost job. That means that I will stand with my sheriff if he stands up for that. It's actually more important that I stand with my sheriff than my sheriff stand up for me. It's more important that we stand up for each other's rights than that we stand up for our own rights. Benjamin Franklin said, we must all hang together, or we will assuredly hang separately. We have been divided. The country, the society today works on division, separating people, isolating people, whether it's, by race, by class, by where you live, Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus liberal, name it. It's all about dividing people because it's divided forces. It's the gazelle that gets separated from the pack that the lions get. So as much as I would hope people here would be willing to stand up and say no, it's actually more important that you look at your neighbors that are standing up and you say, I'll stand with you. Now that works two ways. Way number one, I live near a small town, small city. I'm trying to meet a bunch of the locals there because I want them to understand, will you protect your own rights? Can I trust you to protect your rights and by extension, protect mine? So when I go into a business and they point at me and say, you must wear a mask, I'm sorry, if I can't trust you to defend your own property, and I explain this to him this way, I've only had to do it a couple times here. If I cannot trust you to protect your own rights, it is illegal for the government to deprive you of running your business how you see fit without due process of law. That is illegal. It's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of the law. If I can't trust you to stand up for your own rights, why should I trust you with anything of mine? Why should I trust you with my business? Why should I trust you with my information? I can't trust you. Notice when I said I wouldn't fly to Bismarck, I said because I don't trust the airlines. I don't trust that they will protect their rights, that they'll protect my rights, that they won't infringe on my rights for some political gain. I don't trust them. And if I can't trust them to do that, then why would I give them money? Why would I trust them to fly me from Nashville to Bismarck if I can't trust them to protect anything? If they're going to make that a political statement, why? If they're going to say, we'll be more than happy to, we legally have the, and I don't disagree, they have the legal authority to demand masks. They have the legal authority to demand vaccines. They have the legal authority to do so. Doesn't make it right. And if I cannot trust them to do what is right, how can I trust them to get me there in one piece? The same for the local businesses. There's been a lot of talk about setting up a conservative economy because of all the large corporations that are infringing on our rights. And I believe in the idea. But I think we don't start by building the next Walmart. We start by looking at vendors and saying, do I trust you? Now, it's not a binary question, right? It's never going to be all or nothing. We all have to make the decisions about what is most important. Perfect example. My book is printed by Amazon, right? I can't sell my book without Amazon. I'm looking for other ways of doing it. By the way, if you know a publisher that is interested in picking up my book, I'd love to talk to them. But whenever possible, we stand with those who protect our rights. We stand against those who don't. Which means if Walmart or Kroger or Food Lion or Lowe's or anything, if I can't trust them with my rights, I can't trust them. I don't need, but guess what? I have a lot of small business. I pick those stores because those stores all exist in my city. But I got lots of little shops. I got the barber. I've got the small coffee shop, my accountant, the jewelry store, the clothing store, the little grocery stores are all over. I got all these little places I can go. Hey, guess what? If you will protect my rights, I'll do business here rather than with the people who are trying to steal my rights. And that's something we can each do in our lives each and every day. All right, Jen, you asked a good question. How is it constitutional to impose healthcare rights? Well, first of all, understand the Constitution does not place restrictions on individuals or private parties. It places restrictions on on government. Government cannot issue mask mandates. However, Walmart, Kroger, Lowe's, those are private companies on private property. In the same way you can set restrictions on who's allowed to enter your property, they can set restrictions on who can enter their property. They do not give up their private property rights simply because they allow the public in general to come in. They can set the standards. It's legal. It isn't right, but it's legal. But we all make these decisions. So when you see, like I said, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, when YouTube's been, I'm almost sure YouTube's been shadow banning me because my viewership dropped to like a quarter of what it was, and it's slowly coming back up. I'm not dependent on them. If our rights and our liberty are that important to us, are they important for us to go somewhere else? Is it important enough to shop at a different store, to do business with a different company? And again, I know it can't be an all or nothing, right? We live in the real world. I had the telephone guys out here a few months ago, and the guy walked to my front, knocked on the front door and put a mask on. I said, "Don't worry about the mask." He goes, "No, it's a company policy. If someone stops by and sees me in your house without a mask, I get fired." Okay. Sorry. I have no other choice. I've only got one phone company. But we need to find where we can make these decisions and support the businesses and the individuals that are standing up for your rights. There's a video of I think it's a restaurant in Buffalo where when the owner stood up to an unreasonable search by the code enforcement or health department or something, the people in the restaurant stood with him. We need to be willing to do that. We need to be willing to do that with, again, small businesses, large businesses, anyone that's around.
Yeah. Okay. So I know this kind of argument is wrong, but I actually saw someone addressing that, saying what you were saying, which is it was right because it's private property rights. But someone said, "Oh no, it's a public accommodation. It's federal law or whatever about public accommodations." I'm like, what would be your rebuttal?
Yep, I've argued that too. And guess what? Public accommodation laws are unconstitutional. In fact, I had that argument with somebody that I actually, that's another story. A public accommodation law is unconstitutional because it deprives the property owner of the enjoyment of their property without due process of law. It is a violation of the Constitution. Therefore, it's a violation of a delegated power. It is void. Simply because you're open to the public doesn't make you public property. Simply because you open your business to the public does not make that business public property. And the federal government has no government has the legal authority to deprive you of your property, the enjoyment, the use, and the control over it without due process of law, a process that protects the rights of the individual. Public accommodation laws are garbage. I ignore
them. This is, I also bring you to another question. So in my state, we're actually passing a lot of legislation to
prevent public schools from teaching critical race theory or any of that other garbage.
Mhm.
We actually passed them, like both of the bills, both in college and for the youngsters.
Cool.
Um,
Where is that?
Idaho.
Idaho. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was kind of wondering, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, public schools are government, so and that's legal, right? I mean, yeah, that is legal, right? Yeah, because I mean, that's within their jurisdiction. If they went to a private school and say you must teach critical race theory like other states are doing, that'd be, a violation of private property rights. Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. So what were you asking? I mean, or were you just following up?
I think I'm more a follow
Okay.
up.
Again, it comes down to it's more important. Here's a perfect example of what I've been saying. So let's forget the big box stores, right? Because everyone hates the big box stores. Let's pick. I'll give you a perfect example. Tennessee went through the mass nonsense. Tennessee went through the shutdown nonsense. When the shutdown was over, I needed a haircut. I go to my local barber and there's a sign asking everyone to wear a mask. And I look and there's about half the people wearing masks, about half of them are not. All right. I go and I sit down and the speaker said on the side, we're looking to protect your health. Okay. I got an old school barber. When it was finally my turn, everyone else was gone. I was the last one there. I asked him about it. And I said, because I knew he had some health issues. And I asked him, I said, do you want me to wear a mask because you're healthy? He goes, nah, I don't care about that. I said, fine. I said, but I'll let you know. The only reason I'm still sitting here is because you asked, you didn't mandate, and you said you were doing it to protect our health, not because the government said so. If that sign had said government say so, I'd have walked out and found another barber. Actually, I would have told you I won't do business here anymore, and I'd have walked out and found another barber. Does he or does he not have the right to say, I want people to wear a mask in my property? Imagine your home. Imagine in your home, you have a person in your house that has an immune deficiency. So you ask people before they come into the house, listen, we have a person, they're very susceptible to colds and flus. Please put on a mask. Please use a hand sanitizer, yada, 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 then come in. Do you have a right to do that in your home? Well, if you have a right to do that in your home, don't you have a right to do that in your business? And if you have the right to do that in your business, don't you have the corporations, which are owned by individuals, right, by groups of individuals, don't they have the right to do exactly the same thing? Now, again, whether it's a good answer or not, they have the right to do it. It is just as important that we protect the right of the people to be stupid as it is for us to defend our own rights. It's one of the reasons why I say you go in and you say, you realize government isn't allowed to do this. It's a violation of the law. It's a violation of your rights. You're not protecting your own rights. You do realize this, don't you? Give them the chance. If they say, no, we're gonna be good little servants. Sorry, I can't do business with you. If I can't trust you to protect our rights when it's a mask, what happens when it's someone asking for papers? What happens when it's you have to have the right ID? You have to have the oh, this person's been doxxed and they're it's now cancel culture. Don't do business with Paul. He actually talks about the Constitution. How dare he, the racist, bigoted bastard? If I can't trust you to stand up when it's something simple like a mask, how can I trust you when it becomes more serious than that? We have to take care of the little things so that they don't become big things. Okay. Woo. Well, that's been interesting.
Just a heads up. So I think today, I think we've had probably 15 to 20 people pass through. Because what I did is I linked the live stream in like several Gab groups that would get traffic that would really be interested in the Constitution, and I think that's a really efficient way of getting people to show up. So yeah, it's just an idea. I think I'm gonna start doing it more. Just
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually thinking about how I'm going to automate some more of my postings, because right now I've got so many social media sites I could be posting to, but I can't. It's a pain to hit them all. I'd spend all day doing nothing but social media posts. I don't have the time, but I'm a computer geek, so I'm working on a way that I can automate that. So, all right, everyone. Well, listen, it's been an hour and a half. It's been a great conversation. I'm I'm glad people are joining on the Zoom. I like seeing faces occasionally. I like talking to people. Yes, hello. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and I'll figure out beforehand what that's going to be. If you want people to join, sign up at theconstitutionstudy.com. Just go to the calendar, click on the next event, register. You'll get the reminder emails. It's still a little clunky. The automation systems are not as automated as I would like. So I still kind of have to do things old school, but we're working on it. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you for attending, and keep following. Listen on America Out Loud. I've been having a lot of fun on there. So check out AmericaOutloud.com, and we'll talk to you later. See you in a couple weeks.